everybody. I'm Paula McKinley. I'm one of the librarians here, and today we have a very special guest, Rosemary, who is one of our trustees.
Okay.
Excellent. So we have some new books coming out in August, and I know we both have a list of things that we're excited to read. So I'll hand the baton over to you, Rosemary, to talk about some of the things that you're excited to read.
Thank you, Paula. Well, the first book on the list of books coming in that I thought I'd be interested in reading is Wandering in Strange Lands. A daughter of the Great Migration reclaims her roots. This is from the reviews that I've read, a story of a young woman whose family made the Great Migration in the mid 20th century from the south to the north, looking for work primarily. And I'm interested in that experience. This sounds like a particularly interesting book. And it's that kind of seeking your identity, I think, that attracts me to that.
That sounds amazing. So you said this is definitely a biography / memoir?
I think so, yes, that's my impression.
So similar to you, I'm always really interested in reading nonfiction. So one of the nonfiction adult books I have picked is called Caste, The Origin of Our Discontents. It's by Isabel Wilkerson. Some may recognize her from her very popular title, The Warmth of Other Suns. And this is examining, oh, did you read that, Rosemary?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons I was interested in this book, so similar.
Oh, that's perfect. Just bridging connections.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was the most interested in about this book, just peeking at my notes, is it talks about power and hierarchy in the United States, and it draws from a few other historical examples, like India, Nazi Germany, and it just studies human behavior and what happens with a nation's fate when we talk about power structure. And I know something that's a topic I'm always interested in. This is great for people who enjoyed Malcolm Gladwell's books, and a little bit of Michael Pollan's style. So I'm very excited about this one.
Yeah, I'm a big Malcolm Gladwell fan too, so that would be interesting to me. Shall we move on?
Yes. Did you have any other nonfiction books that you're interested in reading, or shall we jump to fiction?
Well, let's see. I did have another one, but let's see how we're doing on time. The others that I have chosen, I think, fall into the category of fiction.
Excellent. We'll move on to fiction then.
So one that I thought would be interesting to read is We Are All the Same in the Dark by Julia Heberlin. And I was struck reading some of the reviews that the book is often described by separate reviewers as atmospheric, and that's a quality in fiction I usually enjoy, something that creates an environment. They also said it was unpredictable, which I like, and a surprising plot. So it sounded like a good page-turner kind of book to read, which I'm fond of reading from time to time. So I like that. That sounded like an interesting book to me.
Oh, that's excellent. Did you have a few other fiction books?
I have the next one is also fiction. Cleo McDougal Regrets Nothing, and I have to say I'm attracted to titles like that. I recently read Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, which I also enjoyed. Something about those kinds of titles attracts me. Alison Scotch is the author. It's a book of political intrigue, which certainly is timely, and it's a women in politics. Even though it is fiction, it's covering topics that are timely today, and that sounded interesting to me.
Yeah, I remember reading reviews of that book. It sounds like it's a really good balance of examining the way, because I believe if I remember the plot correctly, this young woman is a political hotshot, a rising star, and she makes a social blunder, and it's about the ramifications of that.
Yes,
And
yes.
I think we have all been there, and I think that watching and reading a story about that will be really interesting and entertaining, and a good balance of something that is a little more light to read, but has some depth and some teeth to it.
Yes, I think so. I think so. What about you? What other books were you interested in the adult fiction area or adult nonfiction, whatever?
I have one fiction that I am very excited to read because I watched a few different interviews that the author gave, and it's called The Death of VIVEK, and the
Yeah.
author is, as I'm looking at, I've created a little phonetic guide, Esme Awaka. This takes place in West Africa and Nigeria, and I think this would be amazing for those who enjoyed a little bit of Jodi Picoult mixed with Ahandi Roy's The God of Small Things in the Ministry
yeah.
of Happiness. So basically, the mother opens her door and she finds her dead son wrapped in a colorful cloth, and then it goes back into the past and follows the family up until the child's death. So this would be a tough read, but from the discussions I've seen of the author, she sounds like she's really amazing, has some real depth, and it's a story that I think you evolve and you grow with as you read it. So I think this would be great to read aloud with somebody else and to have a discussion about. And if you get the chance, she has quite a few different interviews, so if somebody wants to look her up on YouTube, I'd highly recommend it. That's what sold me on this book.
That's really interesting, Paula. Thank you. I will do that, because I would imagine that is a very good way to determine whether a book is going to appeal to you.
Yeah, I recently went into the North Conway bookstore, masked up, of course, and they had this great suggestion read of Decolonize Your Bookshelf. So reading non-European, non-American authors. So if you are on that list as trying to branch out from reading within your own nationality, this would be an excellent one to read.
That's good. I do like that. I've read several books set in India, a couple in Africa. It does help broaden your worldview to read fiction or nonfiction that takes you to a different part of the world, a place you might not ordinarily even think about going.
Absolutely. I know for me, I have a few kids' books that I'm very excited to talk about. Did you have a few kids' books or
I do.
Books?
Yeah, I do. The first one was The Future of Communication, Jun Kuromaya, I guess it is. I'm interested, and I would be interested to read it myself, but I was thinking about my grandchildren who might also be interested. They live in a technology world. You know, they are, the phrase is technological natives, and I am in that immigrant category, you know, having grown into it. But I'm very curious about how technology and communication are changing the way we interact with each other, our interpersonal relationships. It's fascinating. And the book itself talks about some of the new technologies. It goes into brain-computer interfaces, which sounds very interesting. Talks about robots. And I just think it would be a really interesting perspective, which I don't know a lot about.
I think absolutely it would be, considering how much now we're utilizing technology to communicate with one another. I mean, even doing this.
That's right.
There's a computer intermediary. So
yeah. The other couple of books that I picked that I thought might be worth reading, one is not typically something I would pick out, but I liked what I read about. Kids Can Help Fight Poverty. It's essentially a book filled with ideas and projects, and I thought, if I were raising young children, or if I wanted to influence my grandchildren, which would be more the case, this would be a book I would want them to have and think about and read. You know, on the news every once in a while, there's a feel-good story about some child who's selling lemonade to help fight poverty or to feed people, or making masks. I recently saw a piece about a young child, a girl, making masks for people. I think we need to encourage children to see themselves as players, to want to impact the condition of things, especially if they happen to come from some privilege and they don't, need anything. So I thought that would be an interesting book to share with children and young people.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad you picked that one, because I think for a lot of parents, when children are starting to discover these big topics, it's good to give them things, and I think for any of us, to have something that we can do, something that we can control, and something we can contribute to. So I'm so
Yes.
glad you picked that book.
I think so. There was one other one, and then I'm curious to hear what you picked. And I had others, but these were the ones that I thought were most important. This one is kind of a departure for me in general. It's called Sia Martinex and the Moonlight Beginning of Everything by Raquel Gillibrand.
Excellent choice.
It looks amazing. It's described in reviews as gender bending. It addresses issues of immigration. This is a young woman in the story whose mother has been deported, and she's having to live in, I can't even imagine what that would be like to be a child or a young person separated from the family in this horrible way. It's the story of first love. It sounds really like a good read, and a good read for young adults, but also probably for adults.
Oh, absolutely. I have to say, in the young adult category for fiction, there are some amazing reads, and this is one that I would recommend to every single adult, because it has so many relevant issues and with a character that is so likable. That is one of the consistent things I've seen on reviews of this particular book.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, because I think I might actually pick that up and read it.
Perfect. Oh, that always does my heart so good to hear of people that are excited to read something new and to branch out.
Yeah.
Well, like you, I have a few books for youth that I'm very excited to talk about. Similar to your pick about communication, one of the books I have is called Your Strange Brain, a book of brains, how they work, and sometimes how they don't, which that title immediately caught my eye as we were browsing and looking through. So this is a book that balances two major subjects, psychology and anatomy. So how we think and why we think in certain ways, and then the actual structure of our brain. And this was the quote that, if the title didn't sell me, this would have. The brain controls actions, reactions, and other emotions. And in this book, there's facts about a 40,000-year-old brain surgery, which I had no realization that we had such ancient brain surgery. I always think of it as such a new and technological marvel. It talks about canopic jars, which were the jars that the Egyptians would put different organs in. And then someone who only functioned with a third of their brain, which is,
yes,
yeah. I've seen different news reports throughout the years of people who lose different parts of their brain and they're able to function. And so I think this would be a fun book to read just as an adult.
Well, I agree. In fact, it was on my list too. And one of the things that I thought would be interesting about it is that it is told in stories of people who have had relevant psychological or intellectual or surgeries. And that's always interesting to me, is to read about something, but in the context of lives lived, like the one you're talking about with the third of the brain. And we know so little still really about the brain and how it works.
Yeah, it's such an interesting book, and you put it in a very perfect way. For any fact-telling or nonfiction books with children, I think if we put it in terms of this is a person's life and story, and here are some facts that impact their life, I think it not only creates a connection, I think we tend to understand subjects better when we can connect it to a living, breathing human being. So I think this book will be an excellent way to talk about that.
Absolutely.
Um, Similar to what we were talking about of having a direct connection in seeing the perspective, the next book I have to talk about is a picture book, and it's called What About Neko? A Story About Divorce. Families change. It's such a hard topic, but what is so well done about this one is that it's about a brother and a sister and their dog Neko, and trying to navigate what family life is like after a divorce. It's really empathetic. I think it does a great job of using the dog Neko as a conversation starter with kids of like, how do we talk about family changes? How do we talk about mom and dad living in two different homes? And what's really great, it has a happy ending where the family meets at the dog park to be able to spend together because dad's new apartment does not allow dogs. It's just a great picture book to explain and talk about a tough topic in a way that is positive, it's cheerful, but still acknowledges that there are feelings that are really big for kids to talk about.
It sounds perfect as a vehicle for helping children understand what is almost always a challenging time, no matter how amicable it might be. And children tend to think that they had a responsibility in it. So this is a great, I think, terrific, sounds like a terrific book for families going through that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I think it does a great job of highlighting that you can talk about your feelings with your parents. You can work out, even as a family that's living in separate homes, you can problem solve together. So I thought they did a really excellent job on that book. And if anyone's interested in more books about divorce or separation, we actually have curated a separate list. We can link it down below about how do we talk about divorce with children. Excellent. So I have just one other book, and it's a really good, fun one, particularly to those who have feline companions at home. I know I certainly do, and they have personality. So this book is called No Fuzzball. It is a picture book. It is by Isabel Kung or Kang. I am not sure on the pronunciation. And like all cats, Fuzzball is a magnificent and powerful queen. And she jumps up on any pieces of furniture she wants. She scratches the couch. She runs around like a mad woman in the middle of the night. And anybody who's a cat owner will know that's true. But even as a magnificent kitty queen, she realizes when her family goes away that maybe she should treat her subjects better. I think this is a great way to not only talk about when we're bossy, how that affects other people and how we can be kind and compassionate and think of others. And it's a fun story at the same time. Fuzzball is a cute little kitten that's illustrated on every page. And the quote I got from the book was, everyone will shout out for Nose Fuzzball, for a kitty queen who learns how to be a kind ruler.
That's so good. I'm not particularly a cat person, but my family is. And the running around in the middle of the night is so true. I've had that experience staying with them occasionally. And that sounds like a very good, it's wonderful if you can find ways to convey an important lesson in a way that is completely understandable to a child. And this sounds like it would be.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like if the story is not enjoyable, you can't get the message or the point across, because a story that's read again and again to a child, those are the virtues and the beliefs and the good actions and the good behavior that we're looking to share and then for children to then do.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent.
Excellent. So I think we have run through all of the books that I had to talk about, unless you had any others, Rosemary.
No, well, There is one that I didn't know whether or not we would have time for, but if we have a few minutes.
We do. We have plenty of time. You were just very quick today.
Good. This one is Guardians of Liberty. It's in the youth category. Linda Osborne is the author, and it is about the First Amendment. And it looks to be well done. And it's the kind of book that I would recommend for probably many adults too, because often what's written for younger people is easier to comprehend and understand than if you read something that's written by a PhD for an adult audience. This is it covers recent history, it covers freedom of the press. It also has a fairly comprehensive bibliography, which if you're a young person interested in the amendments to the Constitution, or you want to know more about free speech, we say a lot of things about free speech. We don't always fully appreciate what exactly that means in the context of a democracy. So I thought that would be a good read for just about anybody.
Excellent. I know which book you're talking about. It actually came in here, I think today we're getting it prepped and ready for it to go out, and it will be an excellent addition to anybody's checkout order to pick up via curbside.
Great, that's good.
Excellent. So I think we are all set, and we will see everybody next week when we talk about a different library topic, audiobooks.
Thank you, Paula.
Oh,
bye.